Okay, this is our video for our earthworm anatomy for our upcoming dissection. We're going to talk about our internal and external anatomy of the earthworm, and we're going to talk about it by systems. The first one being the digestive system. And I will draw this in blue, and it's going to start with the mouth up here, and it's going to end with the anus down here. So we'll label mouth and anus. And everything in between we'll draw blue and we will label it. So we've got our mouth that opens up to our pharynx, which is just kind of the throat of the animal. And then we have the esophagus. So we'll label these. Pharynx, which is the throat. And then the esophagus. Just like our digestive system, we have an esophagus that goes from our mouth all the way down to our stomach. The earthworm has two chambers next. The first one is called a crop, and then the second one is the gizzard. The crop is for storage, stores the food, and the gizzard is for grinding. Birds have these. If any of you have any chickens or anything, you have to give them stones so that they can grind up their food. Well, that's the same purpose here. And you'll notice when you dissect that the crop is much softer and more pliable than the gizzard. The gizzard is hard because it's full of muscles. From this, we have the intestine that basically goes the entire length all the way down to, we'll draw it all the way down to the anus, where in the intestine is where all the nutrients are absorbed. And eventually food goes out. So that's the digestive system. The next system we'll go ahead and look at is the circulatory system. I'll draw that in red. And the circulatory system, just like in humans, is going to consist of the hearts and the blood vessels. Everything that we need to circulate blood so we can get oxygen and everything where it needs to be. So the earthworm actually has a series of aortic arches, and these are their hearts. They have 5 of them, and they're going to ring around the esophagus, kind of in a spirally sort of format. I'm not drawing it the best, but that's all right. 3, 4, 5. And these arches kind of connect to each other. So these are the aortic arches. Or hearts. And now these lead to 2 different blood vessels. We have a dorsal blood vessel that comes up and runs the length of the back of the earthworm, going all the way down. And then we have the ventral blood vessel, which runs along the belly side or the ventral part of the earthworm. So I'll put that down here. Dorsal blood vessel, and then ventral blood vessel. Okay, and that's the simple aortic system. Next, we'll go to the nervous system. Make that in green, and it's very simply consists of a brain, and the brain is not really a brain, it's more just like a cluster of nerves. And we call a cluster of nerves ganglion, as you heard on the Nearpod. Got kind of a nerve, and it's going to come down here to the ventral nerve cord. And this nerve cord is going to run the length of the belly, very similar to the ventral blood vessel. So we have the brain, which is really just ganglia, or that cluster of nerves. And then we have our ventral nerve cord. And this ventral nerve cord is going to have bumps along the way of those ganglia, those concentrated nerve parts. So we got some more ganglia throughout there. All right, and finally, we will talk about the reproductive system. And worms have the ability to have both parts. They have male parts and female parts in order to reproduce. However, they can't reproduce with themselves. So what we have are seminal receptacles, and they're going to be these kind of, they look like whitish sacs. I know we're drawing it in orange, but that's so you can see. Seminal receptacles, and these store sperm. And then we have our seminal vesicles. Put these down here. And these produce sperm. All right, a few things about the external part of a worm. We have segments, which are all of these parts. I only show them on the bottom half, but they really go all the way through. We just didn't draw them on there because we wanted to see the internal. So we've got segments. And again, the blood vessels, the nerves, all of those go all the way down. And there are muscles attached to each segment allowing for movement. We also have setae, which are those tiny little bristle-like, you'll actually feel them on the underside. It kind of feels a little bit like a scouring brush. These are for movement along the outside. And now, those of you who have ever seen an earthworm or gone fishing, you'll notice that they have this kind of thick part that appears to kind of almost split them in half. And this piece is called the clitellum. And the clitellum, I'm just going to kind of put it, it's external. It's kind of this thickened portion, the clitellum. And this part is used in reproduction, when earthworms reproduce. So this is our general basic anatomy on the earthworm.